Okay. Hi, good morning. I'm Morgan Finkelstein. I'm the spokesperson for a new political action committee called Protect Abortion Rights, No Retention, Bolick and King. We're here today to announce a new effort to urge voters to vote against the retention of Arizona Supreme Court Justices Clint, Bolick, and Kathryn King. Arizona has a model judicial election system that some call a gold standard. In the largest counties in Arizona, judges are vetted through a merit-based selection committee as opposed to the partisan elections we see throughout the country. Central to Arizona's system are the retention elections that justices must stand for. In the case of the Arizona Supreme Court justices, these take place every 6 years. This guarantees that judges, like all the other branches of Arizona's government, remain accountable to the voters. So how did we get here today? In 2022, the United States Supreme Court overturned decades of precedent by overturning Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision. This horrific decision followed decades of planning by anti-abortion activists who advocated for the appointment of far-right judges, not just at the federal level, but also at the state level. This was evident when then Governor Doug Ducey expanded the Arizona Supreme Court from 5 members to 7, thus guaranteeing him the appointment of 2 new anti-abortion justices. With the Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade nationally, it opened the question before the Arizona Supreme Court about an archaic and cruel law that Arizona had on its books 48 years before we became a state. The 1864 ban made nearly all abortions illegal, with no exceptions for rape, incest, or victims of human trafficking. It threatened doctors and nurses with prison, and it endangered the lives of women who may need emergency abortion care. When presented with the question of whether to impose this horrific law, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled in a split decision 4-2 to impose the 1864 ban on Arizona. Justices Clint, Bolick, and Kathryn King ruled in favor of the 1864 ban. This vote was far out of the mainstream and has had dangerous consequences for Arizona. That is why anti-abortion politicians in the state legislature are trying to pass Proposition 137. Now Arizonans will be presented with a question. Do we trust these 2 justices, Bolick and King, with another 6-year term? This year, Arizona voters will get to protect abortion rights with their votes. First on Prop 139 to keep politicians out of our medical decisions, and secondly, to vote no on retention for Justices Bolick and King. Our first speaker today is Dr. Gabrielle Goodrick. Dr. Goodrick?
Thank you. As a physician, I know that there are many complex and personal reasons a patient might seek an abortion, which is why our relationships with our patients are based on medical expertise, empathy, and a firsthand understanding of a woman's unique situation. In turn, my patients trust me to provide counseling, guidance, and care with the well-being of the patient in the moment and over the course of their life being my first and highest priority. In other words, abortion care is no different than other kinds of health care. In April, we saw a ruling from the Arizona Supreme Court that reinstated the 1864 near total abortion ban that preceded the right of women to vote. This archaic law, with no exceptions for the dozens of medical complications that can arise and punish survivors of rape and incest. Lives were put at risk, basic rights and health care were out of reach, all because of Arizona politicians playing the kinds of dangerous games with women's health care that we've seen in Texas, Florida, and Alabama. This disrespect and lack of empathy for Arizona women, as well as a lack of regard for the judgment and expertise of medical professionals in consultation with their patients, is a direct result of the Arizona Supreme Court Justices Clint, Bolick, and Kathryn King ruling in favor of the 1864 abortion ban. What Arizona providers like myself want you to know is this: every patient deserves to have bodily autonomy and to be treated with compassion and to have access to comprehensive reproductive health care when they need it. Arizonans deserve the freedom to make their own decisions about pregnancy and abortion without interference from the government. This November, these basic rights and the dignity of Arizona women are on the line, up and down the ballot. We are determined to put healthcare decisions back where they belong, with patients, their families, and their physician. We cannot forget what Justices Bolick and King did to impact the legal landscape of abortion in Arizona. This is why we need to hold them both accountable and vote them out. Vote no on retention of Clint Bolick and Kathryn King. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodrick. Our next speaker today is Erica Mock, the Chief External Affairs Officer with the Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Erica Mock, and I am the Chief External Affairs Officer with Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona, or PPAA. We face a critical moment in the ongoing fight for reproductive rights, and PPAA is committed to protecting abortion rights in Arizona. This year, voters can protect these fundamental rights by voting yes on Proposition 139 and voting no retention on Justices Bolick and King. Voters have the right to make their voices heard when our courts go too far. 50 years ago, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor created a system approved by the voters, establishing a model for choosing, evaluating, and retaining judges that balances the need for fair and impartial courts with the need for public accountability and transparency. The ability for voters to reject judges on our ballot is part of our democratic process to ensure the courts remain balanced, current, and in touch with the people. Partisan, out-of-touch judges have no place in our private medical decisions and must have no place in our courts. By voting to reinstate the extreme 1864 abortion ban, Arizona Supreme Court Justices Bolick and King made nearly all abortion care in Arizona illegal, targeting medical providers and endangering the lives of Arizonans needing this critical care. Abortion bans, even with so-called exceptions, are forcing doctors to turn away people in need of urgent medical care. These restrictions place medical professionals in impossible situations where they must determine whether a patient's emergency is dire enough to meet the vague standards set by politicians. If they misjudge, medical providers risk prison sentences. This is not hypothetical. It is happening across the country, and the consequences are nothing short of devastating for patients in need of abortion care. We cannot allow partisan, out-of-touch judges and politicians to strip away our rights any longer. This November, we have a chance to protect our rights by enshrining the right to abortion in our state constitution, by voting yes on Prop 139, and by voting no retention on Bolick and King. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Our next speaker is Abigail Jackson from Progress, Arizona.
Hello, my name is Abigail Jackson, and I am the Digital Director with Progress, Arizona. Earlier this year, Progress Arizona announced our own efforts to urge Arizonans to vote no against retention for Justices Clint Bolick and Kathryn King. Today, we are proud to join efforts to protect abortion rights, no retention, Bolick and King. This year, voters will get to decide on retention for two Arizona Supreme Court Justices, Clint Bolick and Kathryn King. As has been mentioned by all the speakers so far, these two justices represented two of the four who ruled in favor of reinstating the 1864 ban. This alone gives voters plenty of reason to vote against a new 6-year term. But this is not the only reason voters should vote no on their retention. Both Justice Bolick and Justice King have been hostile to citizen efforts to fund K-12 public education. This is not surprising when you consider Justice Bolick spent his life as a special interest lobbyist railing against education and advocating against school funding and desegregation. After becoming a state Supreme Court justice, he used his power to block a voter initiative that would have restored much-needed funding to K-12 classrooms. Before she was appointed by Governor Doug Ducey, Justice King spent much of her career as a corporate litigator, helping employers squash lawsuits brought by their employees. When the legislature passed a flat tax that gave a giant tax break to the wealthiest Arizonans and decimated the funding base of our public education system, education groups fought back, launching a citizen referendum to allow voters to veto this extreme proposal. Justice Bolick and Justice King joined their colleagues in denying the citizens of Arizona a say as our state constitution intended. When it comes to a choice between big and powerful special interests in the citizens of Arizona, Bolick and King have shown which side they are on. They are simply too extreme to be allowed to serve another term on the Arizona Supreme Court. On November 5th, Arizona voters should vote no on retention for Clint Bolick and Kathryn King. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Now I want to invite the chair of our PAC, DJ Quinlan, up, and we'll open up the floor for Q&A.